Now, the only way I'm able to buy more watches, have them in my collection, enjoy them, and also share them with you guys is by selling watches. I sell watches, I recoup some money, I then reinvest that money into more watches. I then get to experience more watches, enjoy more watches, and share them with you. And I really had not really thought about the whole sales process too much. It's something that I've sort of developed over the years and has become something quite easy for me. But I've been asked recently a bunch of times, how do I sell my watches? And I thought, well, that's a pretty easy thing. You just sort of sell them. But then when I thought through the step-by-step process that I actually do to sell watches, I then realized that there is actually quite a bit of a step-by-step process to sell my watches. And I want to share that process with you today. Hello, you're watching James. My name's James. You're watching me, and I'm talking about watches. And today I'm talking about selling watches. But before I even talk about that, I want to be very clear. I don't sell watches unless I'm absolutely ready to sell my watches. My watches stay in my collection for as long as I want. That might be 3 weeks, that might be 3 years, that might be 30 years. They stay in my collection for as long as that I want them in my collection. And I know I've done this correctly over the years because I haven't regretted one single sale of one single watch. If I had sold a watch before I'm ready, I think I would regret that sale. And I haven't regretted any, so I'm pretty sure that I've always done the right thing. So don't think that I sell my watches non-stop so I can buy more watches and just keep flipping and buying and flipping and buying. Not at all. I buy watches because I want to own them, I want to enjoy them, I want to wear them, and I want them in my collection. I only then sell them when I'm ready to sell them. And today I want to share with you that sales process because there's a bit to it. Now, I'm not sure how entertaining this episode will be, but I think it will definitely be helpful. So please stick with it. It is a bit of a step-by-step process, and I apologize if it's not so interesting compared to some of my other videos. Now, a lot of people ask me, where do I sell my watches? And I'm definitely going to be sharing that with you today. But to be honest, that's sort of the last step of the process. So I'm going to talk about it at the end of these steps of the process. But I'm going to tell you that I have a bit of a focus when I am selling watches. I'm considering something in every little step that I'm doing. And what I'm considering is that I'm trying to answer questions to the people that are looking to buy the watch. I'm thinking about the questions that I ask people about when I'm looking to buy it. And I'm looking to sort of answer those questions with my photos, with my descriptions, with everything that I do. So keep that in mind as I describe and show you what I'm doing. Firstly, we're going to start off with the photographs. It really shocks me how bad some photographs are on some watch listings, and I try not to do that. So firstly, I try to give some good photos, I try to show all the watch, and I also try to answer questions. Let me explain. Firstly, the very first photo that I use, and I make sure that it is my main photograph on that listing, and make sure it is the main one because quite often some of these places where you sell watches may rearrange your photos, so make sure this ends up being the first one. And that is a nice close-up of the dial of the watch. Very clear, shows what the watch is. If you're scrolling through listings on a particular website, you'll see it, you'll instantly know what it is, or at least it'll attract your attention. The second photo that I always have is everything that comes with the watch. I have the watch sitting in the watch box, I have everything laid out around it, any spare straps, any spare links, warranty cards, hang tags, anything that's going to come with that watch, have it in one photo, have it all clearly on display. You're answering a question here. You're answering questions like, does it have the spare links? Does it come with the box? Is there spare straps? You're answering questions because you're showing everything that comes with the watch. Next couple of photos are pretty simple. One side of the case, the other side of the case. Showing off the crown, showing off the other side of the case. I then do a case back photo. I then do a photo of the bracelet as well as the clasp. And often I'll do the clasp open, so it answers the question of, is it a milled clasp or not? So you're seeing the bracelet, you're seeing the clasp, and you're seeing the construction of the clasp. I then do 2 other photos normally, and this sort of depends on the watch. If the watch has a particularly amazing feature about it, something rather special, I then try and put a photo of that special thing. Whether it's something particularly special that's on the dial, whether it's a particularly special case back, whether there's something maybe like an adjustable on-the-fly clasp arrangement, I put a photo of that. Or if there's something that comes with the watch that is really special, I'd take a photo of that. And then the only other photo that I put in there is showing off if there's any damage to the watch. I'm always completely upfront about damage to watches or if there's any marks, and I really want to point it out because I don't want somebody buying a watch, getting it, and then being upset. I'm answering questions about, is there any problems with the watch? I'm really clearly showing what it is. The next thing I think about is the title of the watch. And there needs to be a lot of information in this title because think about who's buying it. It might be a watch enthusiast. It might be a person who has never bought a watch before and has absolutely no clue about it. It might be somebody that is just getting into watches and might have a bit of an understanding, but a basic understanding. It might be somebody buying it for a gift. You just want to put a fair bit of information into the description. You need the make, write what it is, write the model number. If somebody's actually searching for a particular watch, put the model number in so they can search it. If it has a nickname, if it's a Seiko, write that it's a turtle. Write Seiko turtle and then the serial number so they can search that as well. I also put in there whether it is an automatic or a mechanical or a quartz watch as well. I kind of know if it's quartz or not, but a lot of other people don't, and it's worthwhile listing that. Sometimes I'll even list the case diameter in there, because if it's a watch that possibly might cause people concerns about the case diameter, sometimes I'll put that in the title. And I also generally put description of sort of the condition, especially if it is particularly good. If it's like new, I write like new in that title. Next, you need a good description. Please take the time to do a good description. Cover some things that are going to be answering questions. Case diameter, lug to lug. Really, they're the only sort of dimensions I bother giving, because they're the only ones that people actually want. Again, I talk about the condition of the watch, the age of the watch, anything wrong with the watch. I then list again what comes with it, so there is a real clear listing. I then identify specifically what movement is inside of it. If it's a Seiko NH35, I say a Seiko NH35. I then write mechanical automatic, because again, then I'm looking to sort of tell people who perhaps aren't knowing watches as well as I do that it is an automatic mechanical watch. I also mention why I'm selling the watch. Sometimes this is something that is going to be asked quite often, and I answer that. And generally my thing is that I've got too many watches and I'm downsizing the collection. And that's because I've got too many watches and I'm downsizing my collection. And I'm downsizing my collection so I can buy other watches. So at least a quick line, it's just answering that question. And depending on where you're going to be listing this watch, I tend to write the suburb that I'm living in, the state that I'm living in, and that I'm willing to post the watch. If it's one of these sites that doesn't sort of include all that, like eBay, I tend to just give that sort of information in there. Don't be too specific about my address by any means, but it's worthwhile doing that, because if somebody lives 100 kilometers away from you or a very long distance, well, they may not bother coming to pick it up or meeting you somewhere. But if they know, hey, you're only a 5-minute drive away, yeah, that might encourage me to come and have a look at the watch and buy it. So I covered that question as well of where are you? Because that's a question that gets asked all the time. And depending on the watch and depending on what sort of information is out there online, occasionally I will then cut and paste some online information under all that. Please don't just put that in and not actually put some personal stuff in there, and don't mention the stuff that I've just mentioned. Put it underneath. If there's anything specific that actually may give further details and give some more information, maybe even a link to the original website. And then I need to think about how much am I going to price this watch at. And this is really, really important. Now, hopefully I've bought this watch at a really good price so that I can at least sort of get my money back. But I need to be aware that I have to be realistic. I can't ask too much. And I also don't want to be dropping my price really quickly. Some people price their watches super, super high, and then within days they're dropping. Don't do that. Put the right price first and then wait. Put it at that price that is actually worthwhile, that is realistic, and then hold on to that figure. Because people are going to be seeing that listing, they're going to be seeing the price, and if they see it start to drop, well, then they're going to wait for it to drop further. You're better off just picking the right price. And the way that I pick prices is by looking to see what else is out there for sale. I look on eBay, I look on Marketplace, I look on Chrono24. But I also keep in my back of my mind is that these are the prices that people are asking, not the prices that they are getting. So please be realistic with your pricing. Be aware of what you paid for it. Be aware if you paid full price for this watch, and even if it is in new condition, you can't ask just 1% less than what that full asking price is, because, well, why are they going to pay that when they can buy it brand new for a little bit more? So just be realistic with your pricing. Next thing to do is to be aware of scammers. Depending on where you're looking to sell this watch, there's going to be scammers out there. There's a couple of websites which are really good, which avoid that, things like Chrono24 and eBay, but there's other websites that really have scam issues. So please be aware not to get caught up in scammers. You don't want to be sending a watch off in the post without receiving money first. You don't want to think you've been paid but haven't been paid. You don't want to sort of make arrangements and have somebody scam you out of your money. And it's relatively easy to sort of avoid scammers. First of all, don't give away a watch unless you have the money either in your account or in your hand. That's fairly simple. Certainly don't post your watch whilst having an email that looks real, but the money's not sitting in your account. You need that money in your account or in your hand. And money in your hand is probably one of the best ways, because if you're selling it locally, well, cash avoids scammers. So I tend to say, especially if I'm selling locally, that cash only. I get some of these messages that I think, oh yeah, I think that's a scammer. And I'll say to them, oh, thank you for your inquiry, cash only to avoid scammers. And then suddenly I don't get any more messages. Also be aware if they're trying to say, hey, can we organise payment and I'm going to send somebody around to pick it up, that's generally a scam. And here in Australia, I'm not sure about overseas, they tend to be using Pay ID. Now, I have no idea what Pay ID is. I know it's a real thing. I don't use it, but I also know very much that scammers use Pay ID. So if you hear people talking about Pay ID, there's a possibility that it's a scammer. So where do I actually sell these watches now? Now that I've got a good set of photos, good description, I've set it at the right price, I'm aware not to get scammed, where am I selling these watches? Well, I'm selling on various platforms. Marketplace is my #1 platform to sell on, or the first place that I put it. I put it on just the general buy and sell page, but then I'm also part of groups of watch specific sales. There are a bunch of them in Australia. I'm sure there's bunches of them all the way around the world in your particular area or particular country. There are lots of places that are selling just watches and are specific to selling watches. So I'm part of all those groups, and it's nice and easy with Marketplace. You set up the ad and then it says, do you want to sell anywhere else? You go, yes. And you just click yes, 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 down with all the groups. And it's instantly put out onto all of those sort of groups on Facebook. I then also sell it on Gumtree. Gumtree, I think, is more of an Australian thing. I'm not sure if that is international, but it's just like a local classifieds thing. Sort of what used to be in the newspaper where you could look for things to buy. Now it's just like an online version of that. I think things like Craigslist or something like that over in the US, it's a little bit like that. I also use eBay. eBay is probably one of the best places to sell watches because it gets an international audience, but you need to be aware eBay has fees attached to them. Here in Australia, it's around about 10 or 11% the fees, and I just take that into account when I list the watch and what price that I put it at. Now, I know eBay is different from country to country. I didn't previously realise that, but there are some differences between eBay Australia versus eBay US versus eBay UK. So just be aware of payment platforms and bits and pieces depending on where you are and what eBay gives available to you. First thing is, though, you just need to make sure the money is there before you post the watch. And the last place that I sell watches on is on Chrono24. Chrono24 is a great platform. It's a safe platform. It has an inbuilt escrow payment service as well, which works out really well, keeps money safe as a seller and a buyer. But it is a little bit more of a process. It is a little bit more painful to create and do all the things required to sell a watch, but it means it's really good and safe. But it also means that I then only bother putting watches on Chrono24 that are a little bit more expensive. I don't bother putting all that extra effort into a $100 or $200 watch. It's more the more expensive watches that I bother listing onto Chrono24. Hey, it's Future Me here. I'm just editing this video and I just realized something that I've forgotten to add to this video. And it's really, really important because it's a lesson that I learned that it cost me a bit of money, and that was about postage. Whenever I post these watches, I make a real concerted effort to communicate postage really well with the buyer. What I do is I take photographs of the watch once I'd packaged it to show that this watch is now packaged really well. I then take a photograph of the watch inside its actual postage package, showing the place that it's being sent to and the person's being sent to. And I always use tracking, so I include a tracking number. So whenever you post a watch to somebody, make sure you send them some photos saying, hey, this watch has now been posted, here's your tracking number, and here is how it is packaged, showing you that it is nicely packaged, and here is showing you that it's being sent to you and is being sent to your address. So you know that it's going to arrive, and then they can't turn around and come back to you at a later stage saying, hey, it never arrived, because that's happened to me before. But since being able to send these photos, or since sending these photos and setting tracking numbers, they can't play that game with me anymore. So if you're going to be posting a watch, make sure you do those couple of things. So what I do if I've done all that and the watch just doesn't sell, because some of them just don't sell, and that's sort of the life, I sort of buy these watches not thinking that I'm guaranteed to sell them, that I'm guaranteed to sell them for the same money that I bought them for, but some of them just don't sell, but I've had my time with them. What do? Well, firstly, I'd be patient and I let it sit there on those sites, let it renew, keep it up to date, maybe change around a few things on the description occasionally, maybe update the photos if you think that is something that may need to be done, but then occasionally it just doesn't sell. What do I do then? I tend to delete the listing then, give it a few months, and then I put it back on again. Let it sort of be fresh again. Of course, if it still continues not to sell, well, there's a couple of options then, really, isn't there? I can then either drop the price significantly, which I've done a couple of times, not too many times, and eventually it will end up selling, or occasionally I do get stuck with the watch. And that's okay because I've bought a watch that I wanted to own in the first place, and now I just sort of make it more of maybe a beta watch or something, or even use it as a gift for a friend or a family member. Guys, I really hope this video was somewhat helpful. I know it probably wasn't particularly the most entertaining video that I've ever made, but at least maybe the process maybe helps you put you on a journey to selling some watches. So maybe you can buy some more watches. But if you did like the video, I do appreciate it. Hit that little thumbs up, leave me a comment, and maybe watch one of these videos next.